everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Hope everyone's having a good Monday. Today's a beautiful day out here, and I thought it was a fine time to go ahead and do a story time. And this story time is inspired by a post that I saw of someone that I follow on Twitter. This is also another ex-Jehovah's Witness activist, and he was mentioning a brother who had recently got married, a young brother who married a sister that was significantly older than him. And when I heard the age difference, I was just really stunned until I realized that in the Jehovah's Witness religion, that's not as uncommon as it might be outside the religion. So I thought of an experience that I responded with, but then after that, I remembered there was another even crazier story of another brother and sister, kind of inspired by this post. So if you're interested in hearing this story, this is a story that culminates in the most awkward car group ride ever. Please stay tuned. For the purpose of this story, we'll call the main characters Stella and Winston. And as I go on with the story, people who were raised or who are around in the late 90s, early 2000s will know exactly what I mean by that reference. So Stella and Winston were basically in the same Kingdom Hall, but they weren't in the same congregation. And I first ran into this duo when we were all meeting for field service. I don't remember if it was during the weekday or on the weekend, because I was pioneering at the time. Everything kind of blends together. But the reason that they were with us is that they didn't have any other friends who had territory in their congregation to work out in. So they had to link up with us. And so when I first saw Stella and Winston, my assumption was that it was mother and son. So the mother was going out in service with her son. Winston was he clearly was in his mid-40s at least. So he was an older brother and middle-aged brother. But he still looked younger than Stella, who was in her 60s. And so I saw the two of them. I said, I just assumed they were mother and son. And I assumed they were mother and son for two main reasons. The first reason, of course, was the age gap. And then the second reason, one of the things that happened is I noticed as I was sitting in the field service group meeting, I noticed Winston really staring at me really hard. He was staring at me. It was so obvious. It kind of made me feel really uncomfortable. And I remember how uncomfortable I felt through that whole field service day as we were going out in service. Because not only was he staring at me, he seemed like he was trying to find ways to stand next to me when we were, out in field service. So if I was talking to a sister that he happened to know, he would kind of implant himself in our conversation. But it was just very uncomfortable. It wasn't necessarily overtly inappropriate, but yeah, it was just very odd. So at the time, I just assumed it was, a mother with her unmarried older son who seemed desperate to get married, because that's pretty common in the religion as well. And I didn't think anything of it. So fast forward a few weeks later, I'm in a car group with friends again. And, I see the duo Stella and Winston out again. Somebody in the car group says, "Oh yeah, there goes brother and sister so-and-so, husband and wife." And when I heard that, my jaw just dropped, because the age difference was extremely obvious. And the way, again, that the brother was kind of looking at me the last time, he was in our field service group, I just said, surely this man isn't married to this woman, but he was. So I was like, oh my goodness, that's crazy. But again, it kind of raised my eyebrows, but I didn't think anything of it. So fast forward some more time. Again, I'm regular pioneering, and I think it was towards the end of the month. I don't remember which month it was, but it was towards the end of the month, and I was short on my hours. So I was desperate to figure out how I was going to get some extra hours in field service. So one of the things I would usually do is I would meet some friends at the grocery store down the street from my house for some street work. We would just hand out tracts and magazines to people that were shopping. Very intrusive practice by Jehovah's Witnesses, but You know, it is what it is. When you're trying to get your hours, that's what you do. So I was desperate for hours. So usually I would meet. There were 2 times that our specific congregation would meet. We'd meet at the grocery store at 6 in the morning, and then for people who didn't want to be up that early, we'd meet at the McDonald's around the corner at 7:30. I was really desperate for hours, so usually I would wake up at 7:30 because I loved my sleep. But this time I really had to get my hours, so I said, let me pull up at 6 so I can get an early start to my morning. And so I knew my pioneer partner, basically my BFF, who I talked about in a couple previous videos. I knew she wasn't going out, but I was pretty sure some friends were going to show up. So I got up, drove the 2 minutes to the grocery store, thinking that some friends were going to be there. And unfortunately, nobody was there. And so it was dark outside, so there was no way I was going to get out there by myself and hand tracts to people. So I kind of stayed in my car and just kind of waited. So I waited for about 20 minutes, and I was getting ready to leave to go back home and just wait till a little later to see if anybody else would show up. When this car pulled up, and I could see from a distance based on how they were dressed that they were Jehovah's Witnesses. But as they pulled closer, it was nothing other than Stella and Winston pulling up. So I kind of internally rolled my eyes like, oh, there goes that odd couple. But I was kind of relieved that somebody finally showed up so I can start my time. So, you know, they pull up. They invite me into their car. And I'm like, yeah, you know, I'm happy to finally start my time. So I willingly get in their car. Big mistake. So what ensued was the most awkward, most uncomfortable car ride ever. Literally the entire time, from the time I joined them to the time that we met the field service group at the Kingdom Hall, they were arguing the entire time. And I'm not talking about just banter back and forth where they're kind of making fun of each other, or, you know, they were literally arguing about the stupidest things. They were just going at it back and forth. And every time they'd argue, I'd want to go further and further. I was sitting in the back seat. I just wanted to bury myself in that seat. I just wanted out of that car because it was just so awkward. It was just obvious to me that they were not happy with each other at all. So that's pretty much how the entire car ride went. I usually don't like approaching people and handing them tracts and magazines. Usually, you know, the main fun part of street work was basically talking with the friends and hanging out with my BFF. But this time, this pushed me to go out there and place more magazines because I did not want to be in the car hearing them argue the whole time. So finally, it seemed like forever, but finally time came when it was time for us all to go meet at the Kingdom Hall to meet our field service groups. So they dropped me back at the car to my relief, and I drove up there, and we went on and met the group. So that day I was working out in service with an older sister, and I'll tell you right now, this sister was one of the most lit sisters to work with in field service. She had no filter. She would cuss. She told everybody's business. She spilled all the tea. She was one of the most fun sisters to work out with. And I didn't appreciate it at the time because, you know, I was one of those goody two-shoes Jehovah's Witnesses. But, I mean, I wish I had enjoyed it more often. But I was working out with her. And one fun fact about this particular sister, she was actually the mother of a famous reality star. So that was the significant thing about her. After I left, her son went on to be part of this show. But anyway, so I'm working with her. We get through our territory and we returning back to the Kingdom Hall. As we're pulling up to the Kingdom Hall, the other couple, Stella and Winston, are, you know, getting out their cars and getting ready to go. And this sister, she went in. She started talking about all their business. Apparently she was friends with Stella. She told Stella not to marry this man, but Stella really, really wanted to get married, and now she regretted it. Apparently Winston was a drinker and a smoker. And if you're in a Jehovah's Witness religion, smoking is a no-no. You can get kicked out for smoking one cigarette. But this man was a smoker. And so all of these kinds of things, she said he was verbally abusive. There were all kinds of crazy things that were apparently happening behind closed doors. That was even worse than the arguing that I saw. So it was crazy, but it was really sad. I kind of felt sad for the sister after that. But basically, it was just kind of unfortunate because they were just a really odd couple. It was obvious with the age gap. I was questioning how much they actually had in common. So the story doesn't quite end there. So fast forward some time later, I'm out in service again. We're meeting the group, getting ready to leave to go to our territory. And as I'm walking out, I see the couple, and I'm kind of trying to make a beeline toward my car to kind of avoid them, because now I know all their business, so I don't really want to, kind of necessarily be in contact with them. And as I'm walking by, Winston sees me. He stops me and says, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm like, "I'm doing good," or whatever. He's like, "Oh, I really enjoyed working with you on such and such." I was like, "Uh-huh." So he starts to tell me that he's moving to him and his wife are moving out of state. They're getting ready to go somewhere else. And I'm like, "Oh, okay. I wish you the best." This man says, "Oh, I'm going to miss you." And I just stood there like, and at the same time, Stella, his wife, she was in earshot. She was like less than 2 feet away. She hears Winston talking to me, and she turns around and she starts standing next to him. As awkward as that car ride was, that was 10 times more awkward. So it took everything for me. I wanted to just go to my car and just leave there. I don't know how I got out of that conversation, but that was pretty much that. I didn't see that couple again. I'm not sure what happened to them. I really hope they kind of woke up and smelled the roses and realized that they probably were not very compatible together, and just kind of figured things out, whether they separated or stayed together. But it was just a very odd couple, very awkward situation. But I just wanted to tell that quick story to show you how common it is for Jehovah's Witnesses. The thing about Jehovah's Witnesses is that in order for you to be considered of good standing in the congregation, you have to basically marry only in the Lord. And in the Lord in Jehovah's Witness religion means marry someone who is a baptized Jehovah's Witness. So if you marry outside the religion, if you even marry someone who goes to Jehovah's Witnesses meetings but is not baptized, you're considering breaking that rule. You're considered sinning against Jehovah, and you won't be in good standing. Whatever privileges or whatever responsibilities you have in the congregation, you can lose by not even marrying someone that's in the religion. So what happens is you have a lot of brothers and sisters who they know they want to get married, but they have a limited pick of who they can marry. And to me, it's especially the case when it comes to sisters, because in a lot of areas, especially in the United States, sisters outnumber brothers at least 2-1 in many areas where they're Jehovah's Witnesses. And so basically, sisters don't have a lot of options when it comes to suitable men, because even sometimes baptized Jehovah's Witnesses aren't always considered in good standing. So you want to get married. Sometimes all your friends are getting married and you're the only one single, so you feel left out. So it causes you to kind of lower your standards sometimes and not pick the right person. And so, it's normal to see maybe a sister that marries a brother that's old enough to be her father or her grandfather. I remember even being propositioned or being, flirted with by men old enough to be my father and grandfather. And it might be, sometimes the only suitable brothers in the congregation are way younger than her. And, she feels like that's the only choice she has. And it's sad when you think about it. It really shows how restrictive the organization is, and even limiting, basically what is considered a good marriage mate by basically what religion they identify with. So I just wanted to share that little story time, just to show how much control an organization can have in someone's choices of a marriage mate or soulmate. And just the importance of not allowing an organization, especially a man-made one, to govern who you marry or who you want to be with. And so I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. If you can, please continue to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm over 60 subscribers now, so I'm really happy about that. I'm really grateful that people are interested in what my boring self has to say. Please continue to subscribe and show some love to the channels in my description box. Hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Much love.